Right, as the title suggests, I've been thinking recently about how we speak and think and talk and discuss Counter Strike players and specifically their roles within their teams. And whenever you think of these discussions, you may hear words such as a star player or a support player. Sometimes you'll just hear the words IGL or rifler or AWPer, and that's about as far as we go. And I find this language is useful when you think star player, you can picture your Simple, your Zyrus, but when you look at the middling teams in the pack in the top 30, you can't look at a team like Heroic, let's say, and when you say star player, you're talking about like Stown in that team, okay? But when you say star player, it doesn't equate to Simple. Yeah, their roles like to their team is similar in certain degrees, but I want to use a different system, or rather suggest a different system, which we could use to be talking in a more wider ranging, allow us to have better conversations, because this is language, it restricts conversation about their different players, their abilities, their strengths, their weaknesses, and I've got a potential system that is actually, I first used it while playing the game Football Manager. As many people may know, it's a game where you basically, I used to just call it like a spreadsheet management game. As like a joke. That's the old joke about this game. But incredibly addictive, honestly. I've got so into it. And in this game, I'm going to throw a screenshot up on the screen now. And as you can see, it has a list of playing time for players. Now, I don't follow football. I don't follow football that much, so I don't know if this is actually used in the game itself when you're out there or when you're signing contracts. But within the game, it's an important part which allows you basically to play with dynamics to make sure that your players, when they sign a contract, know what playing time they're getting. So you've got star player, important player, regular starter, squad player, impact sub, fringe player, emergency backup, breakthrough prospect, future prospect, youngster, and surplus to requirements. And I thought potentially we could take some of these, not all of them, as they're not such as like impact sub. That's not really a thing currently. Although Evil Genius is maybe one of their 20 teams might work out. You might have some impact subs there. It's a joke, obviously. But I thought about this and I thought, right, well, let's go apply some players to these titles and let's see how they work and maybe try and just as a thought experiment, I would share my thought process in a video format and anyone can interact in the comments and just let me know whether they think this is something that could become viable and whether you think it meets a quota of expanding our ability to have conversation and also just structurally have a hierarchical system of when we refer to certain players. So we won't be looking at teams in the future saying, oh, they just need a rifler on their team. This may allow, say, a way of describing that. And I'll start. So an example of a star player would be someone like Nico or Simple. Okay, so a star player, if you say that a team is in need of a star player, yeah, or they have a star player, it sets the expectations in the server. Okay, they must be like a talismanic player of some sort. They're top fragging, or they're the most impactful individual. Okay, so they have a lot of control over how your game goes. Like if your star player doesn't turn up, you shouldn't be expecting to win. It also sets expectation out when we're talking about them in discussion. So if you say a player is expected to be a star player, then we know that if they are not putting up the numbers, they don't have the impact in the server. That's not necessarily impact as in like they're getting kills and assists or they're not dying. It's just necessarily being a part of what's going on and making sure that the team overall wins. Um, it also means that we can then hold them accountable for those expectations that have been set upon them. Okay, uh, an example of an important player for me would be someone like Stown in Heroic or Naf in the Liquid squad. Okay, these are players who they're a great player. They're capable of being a star player potentially in Impact, but it's the top of their ceiling. It shouldn't be like their everyday expectations. They're kind of expected to be the second hand man as part of a duo, and perhaps two duos, two like important players could be capable of carrying a team. So that would mean that not necessarily, if you look at a team like Heroic, in theory you could have two important players on that squad that could combine to be as effective, as impactful as a star player, such as a Nico and Simple. Do you see what I mean? If you follow that along, how that could be used in conversational narratives. Um, a regular starter, I'm thinking of Perfecto or Rez, okay? These are consistent players, like they're your middle of the pack kind of guys. They should be your backbone performer. Like they don't take the main spots on the map. Like they're not sitting in Mirage on Connector, yeah? They're the players that you don't think will, like, if there a roster move needed to be done, they're not necessarily the first guy that comes to mind, okay? But if they don't perform, then there'll be plenty of young prospects who might come in to fill that kind of spot, okay? And a regular starter, honestly, again, could be a former important player that may have been part of a duo that has fallen by, or maybe the duo's broken up and they're no longer the primary focal point of the organization of the team, and so they get to play. They're the guy in the middle of the pack, you know. Um, a squad player, for instance, would be someone like Rain, yeah, or Stiko back in the Mouse era. Um, I've put down here like a squad player would normally be a spot fulfilled by an older or more experienced player. Often, when I'm playing Football Manager, a squad player, normally like 26 and up, yeah. I play with really young squads. I try and scalp all those wonder kids, and then you've got a scalp is the wrong word. Fuck it, I'll leave it in. Normally an older player who I've got on the cheap or on the free. He's mentoring for the team of some sort, right? He's there basically to be at a supportive aspect, and that's hence why I've also put Stiko in, because a support player may also be a squad player who's someone who is just part of the group. Maybe think Jax as well in the most recent G2 lineup, who was there to be like Monesi's dad is the joke, right? But he played the bitch roles, okay? The top tier of their skill range might be around a regular or an important player, but again, they're probably performing the bitch roles and the support duties. So then they're not necessarily like relied upon to pit up those numbers, yeah, because they have other expectations and other job roles within the team. And again, I talk about expectations and accountability because again, you look at Rain as a squad player within the team, then he doesn't get shit on when he's being absolutely terrible, okay? And then that's also why we go out of our way to celebrate him when he does absolutely insane shit. But it's not expected of him every day, and so the expectations aren't placed upon him, and then he's not held accountable when he doesn't hit those unrealistic expectations. A fringe player, I think this also could be a useful term. Someone like Amanek in G2 or Issa from OG. A fringe player, again, think of it how as playing time changes for football players and also within Football Manager as well, a fringe player with their playing time and how I'd use it in this discussion is probably it could be a squad player who or a regular starter who's just slowly they've slipped down the hierarchy of a team. Yeah, they're maybe players close to the end of their tenure within a squad, who have failed to fulfill their role and are basically filling gaps, yeah. Or they no longer fit the makeup of a squad after changes. That's specifically talking about how Amanek was had one role when he joined, and then he picked up the AWP and was like a stopgap for a while. And he was a squad player before, playing the bitch roles, and then he's moved around. And then these players are like no longer a part of where the team is going. Okay, that doesn't necessarily mean that these players are like surplus to requirements, which we're coming to next. But they're fringe players who potentially could be moved to another squad, become a squad player again, or go down into lower leagues and fill those squad playing roles and be a mentor to other players. Surplus to requirements. Now, these are players who their form has slipped so far from the medium of the team that they're on that they aren't in step with the team. They're the weak link of a chain that could cost games for the team. Okay, and I've put on here Zipnix. I mean, Astralis is just a walking disaster. Unfortunately, I do feel bad because they've got a lot they haven't got a lot going their way. Really struggled to make it into through the latest open brackets for RMR. It's really given me old like NIP vibes where it's just big names who you want to see good, but they're losing to fucking nobodies. At least they weren't 16-1 by Vegas Squadron, but there's still time. I've also put Cirque on here. I generally think, yeah, he is surplus to requirements on that squad. There are so many talented AWPers that are just popping up left, right, and centre that I would give 30 grand a week, 30 grand a month to other than Cirque right now. A couple more here I've got breakthrough prospects, and this was the initial like flashpoint for where my thought came from this, and I've put down Muncie and Bit now in two different ways. Bit came into the squad, replacing Flamey, who I would say was a fringe player of that squad. Used to be a regular starter, became a squad player, and then eventually became a bit of a fringe player. Didn't fit the makeup of the squad, often underperforming. You see again in practice how that works. And they brought in a breakthrough prospect in the form of Bit. He was part of the academy lineup, or was he part of the academy lineup? I believe he was. Anyway, he came in originally just subbing in on Nuke. Okay, he was a young guy who they wanted to give some space to, and then eventually took over Flamey's role on the main lineup. They swapped, yes, because Flamey went down into the academy team, and Bit was obviously a young player who was raw, had a lot of potential, and then was released by getting more playing time at the top level, surrounded by top teammates, yeah, and playing against top teams, and that is a prospect who's breaking through the scene that they write themselves, breaking through and taking their explosive potential and their skill sets to the server. Now, Munici's also here in this bracket because I think it's also important that they are set up with expectations to eventually fulfill regular starter and upward spots, potentially star players as well. But the distinction between being a breakthrough prospect during their rookie years, yeah, and straight into a regular starter or an important player, makes allowances for mistakes, yeah, and gives the player space to develop. And again, speaking about that accountability, earlier on I was saying regular starters, important players, star players should be held accountable because these are the titles that we give them. They have expectations put upon them. But also, I think it's important that when we give young players, rookies in their starting years, yeah, these opportunities within the lineups at the top level, they should also be given a small amount of allowances, yeah, and understanding that they are still learning. Yes, they have explosive potential, but they still need time for it to come through to fruition. Um, in that same breath, I've got future prospects here, okay, and I've put on here JDC. From Mouse and Drop from Furia. They're young players who have talent, yeah, whose role within the squad would probably be as high as a regular starter. They are once again like a player who is made a step up, that's competing in decent sized competitions, yeah, but they don't have the buzz or necessarily the expectations placed upon them to become a star player. Like when JDC came in for MBK, no one was going, "Wow, this is the next MBK incoming. This is the next BMAS." This no, we don't have put that expectations upon them, and rightly so, because at the end of the day, when you're a young or a future prospect like this, you need time. You need time and exposure to the top ranks of competition. And if you aren't coming in absolutely fiery, then there's probably a reason for that. And so we should give you time to develop to see where you're going to land. And after you had your first year under your belt, maybe a year and a half, then we start applying different expectations to you as a player. And so our expectations and so the accountability that you have also changes. Last one I think that could be applicable is the title of youngster. I generally think that most academy players or these FPL stars, I would put most of these guys like in a youngster role. They have little to no expectations placed upon them. They could potentially become future prospects or breakthrough prospects if they are on mixed teams or academy teams that start making a rise through the ranking system. But in general, I believe that a lot of these titles should be fluid and they have a lot of leeway within them. So, like a regular starter could grow to become a star player over time potentially, but really that's the top of their band. A breakthrough prospect doesn't necessarily become an important player or a star player. They're just a player who early signs say they have the potential to fulfill these roles, but we never know until they have the exposure. Till they've gone on LAN, yeah. Till they've got into the high pressure situations, you never know what their mindset's going to be. You don't know how their work ethic is going to be, the determination, the composure during high moments, and that only comes with exposure. Irregardless, I think I'm definitely going to be trying to think and use this model and use this actively in discussions. But I really wanted just to share this with anyone who comes across this who is a fan of Counter Strike or any other esports basically, and try this model of thought. Try it on. Do exactly what I've done here. Go through the thought process of just picking one or two players who fit this role. Yeah, using the same expectations of that certain players can grow or recede within these roles over time and within the role of the squad that they're currently on. And remember, this isn't like a de facto, like this will also always be a star player. The roles and what is referred to as the playing time on this screenshot is specific to which team that they are on. So a breakthrough prospect may have a great think of like when Nico joined Mouse Sports, blew up, went absolutely massive, and then he moved on to his next teams. But obviously, his playing time and we perceived him changed because of how much impact he had on the server. Let me know how you think about it. Let me know what you think about it. Chuck all of your thoughts and questions down in the comment section as well, please. I'm sure to look through because generally I just want to have a conversation about this and see if you think it's viable.